The views and opinions expressed at Enhanced Down Under are those of the hosts and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the company. Any content provided by our hosts are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.
Welcome to Enhanced Down Under. This is the official podcast channel of Enhance NT. My name is Anna and I'm a qualified education agent counselor.
And my name is Jairus and I work with Enhance NT.
Alright, so before we delve into our topic for today, let's have a recap of episode 19 where we explore Enhance NT's commitment to fostering international education through strategic partnership with new partner schools, Sydney City College and Opulence College. In that episode, we delve into the unique offerings of Sydney City College's Darwin and Sydney campuses, highlighting their modern facilities, community engagement, and career-focused programs. And then we turn our attention to Opulence College, which has two campuses, Canberra and Melbourne. And then they are both renowned for their industry partnerships and practical learning opportunities. The episode also features a comparison of the college's academic programs and campus life, emphasizing how both institutions enrich the international student experience. All right, so for our episode today, Jairus, what's our topic?
Hi, today for our episode would be the proposed legislation to limit international students. So we're going to talk about what the effects are, what could be the possible outcomes, what it means for the future for international students.
This is getting very controversial, especially a recent Senate hearing was conducted because of this. So when they say they are going to limit the international students coming to Australia by 40%, they would base the number in 2019, pre-pandemic times. So although this is not yet confirmed, but most likely the cap, if implemented, would start in January 2025.
2025 is what they're talking about.
Yeah, although that's just a few months away from now. And
we're deep into August now.
Yeah.
So that's only, 4 months away?
4 months away, 4 or 5 months away. And, a lot of partner schools, or a lot of those people in the education industry have voiced their concerns and their strong objections about the proposed legislation. And we cannot blame them for that. But first, let's have a backstory. Why is the government, suddenly, shifting its gear to implementing a recap? The backstory, the Albanese government's approach to visas. This was provided by a research from Australian National University. So the history is, after coming to office in May 2022, the Albanese government worked to pull international education out of its COVID slump. So during COVID, of course, the borders were closed to everyone, to international students also. So there were less enrollments, less businesses. So that's why when the borders have started to open, the Albanese government have worked to up the numbers of international students. So in the financial year from July 2022 to June 2023, it granted nearly 500,000 student visas, which is a 40% increase on the previous largest number. So the time a former student could remain in Australia on a temporary graduate visa was also extended by 2 years. So during in 2022, when the borders have opened, the aim of the Albanese government was to attract more international students. Why do you think so? Why they wanted to do so?
I think it's more of just because a large factor of the earnings
Yeah.
come from international
Yeah.
students. So when the borders were closed, when the pandemic happened, a big chunk of what they would normally earn in that year was affected by it. So
And
now
from
they
what
started.
I've known, international education sector is the fourth largest sector in the industry. So it's bringing in a lot of money.
And like during the 2 to 3 years of the pandemic, I'm sure that they took a big hit when not a lot of people. And even then, I think they were still accepting students, right?
Yeah, they were.
You just couldn't come to Australia.
One partner school was introduced this online class.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you are a student overseas, you can still enroll
Yeah.
in their campus via online, study online. They offered that, and those were the days that the partner schools and even the other universities, even non-partner schools, they offered like generous discounts to students who are going to enroll online or online distance course.
Yeah.
At that time, of course, it was very prevalent since the students were unable to travel to Australia because flights are limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, in order to get into Australia, if you didn't have like a probable cause, you needed to be a citizen.
Yeah.
And even then, if you were a citizen, you could fly in, but it was hard to fly out.
Exactly.
You need to have like a proper cause on why you needed to fly out. You just couldn't like look for flights anywhere and be like, oh, I want to go, and then have an easy time going back in and out.
Yeah.
At that point, I think, like if you were living in Darwin, you had to go to Howard Springs.
Alice Springs is like 20 hours away from the Darwin city.
Howard Springs.
Howard Springs.
Yeah,
Howard Springs is like
it's like 20 minutes away.
not bad.
It's
Okay.
close, but it was a quarantine.
and that's where the quarantine facility is.
Quarantine facility. You had to stay there for 2 weeks in the early parts of the
How was the
pandemic.
facility?
It was actually, I think at first it was okay. It was well
At first?
It was well maintained because you had to pay $2,500.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, for that.
normally you had to pay $2,500 at the start of pandemic, but the problem was not everyone had that kind of money at the start.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of unpaid fees with Howard Springs.
I was working at the consular section of the Australian Embassy in the Philippines at that time. And we were facilitating the return of Australian citizens to Australia. However, their repatriation. However, even though the Australian government really gave a lot of money and loans to Australian citizens just to be able to, repatriate them.
Yeah.
But even with the assistance of the government, the flights were very limited.
It was very
so,
limited.
with the loans given by the government, it was a generous amount of loan. Like you get a first class flight because that's the only flight available. Seats are very limited, so either you get business or first class flights via Singapore Air.
Really?
So if that flight would cost like $3,000, the government would be paying it for you, and the only amount that you need to pay was only like $750.
Wow.
Plus, of course, the financial assistance for you and your family. So I think at that time, the government, and it went for like over a year, that financial assistance that the Australian government extended to its citizens who were aiming to return to Australia. And the government, they gave a lot of loans, hence they need to, somehow have an income.
Yeah. I mean, they at least, like, the good part about this, they did realize, like, the actual threat of COVID itself.
Yeah.
They didn't take it lightly, so their priority was to actually get their citizens back, get them back home into Australian ground to a safe area. So that's like a good deal on their part, at least for that one. At least that they were taken care of for that situation.
So when the borders have started to open in May 2022, the government was very aggressive in attracting international students, to make it
to fill the gaps.
To fill the gaps.
What they didn't earn during those times.
Yeah, so that's why they were very generous in.
And I think it also plays a part where if I was an online student at that time and the borders are open, I'd be like, I want to get my money's worth.
Of course.
I want to I paid to study in Australia, not to be in an online course back at home. So the moment like the borders open, I'm going to go there. I'm going to
Exactly. I would do the same thing because the main factor of being an international student is for you also to integrate into the culture of that country. So learn the culture of Australia, fly.
I think that's one of like probably a factor of why there was such a massive influx of students too.
So that's the backstory. So the government or the Department of Home Affairs granted 500,000 student visa applications, which was a 40% increase from the previous pre-pandemic times. So yeah, it was good, and also they have also increased the number of work hours. I think during the Albanese government, it was unlimited.
It was apparently unlimited, which is I've never heard of that before. Normally they would limit it, so that was
Previously, with the previous government,
it was like 40 hours.
40 hours.
Every 2 weeks, I think. 20
40
hours a
hours?
week.
Okay. So after the pandemic, with the Albanese government, they were very generous. They unlimited work hours,
unlimited
right?
work hours.
It was a good times, those good old years.
Like you were as good as because like the reason they did 20 hours a week was so you can never really become a full-time employee given the hours you have because you're a student. So
and you're supposed to study, not just to work.
So you can't really apply for a full-time job because you're limited to 20 hours a week. But I think that sort of didn't help that they give unlimited hours. Technically, you can now apply for full-time work. And then sometimes we have like businesses who would pay you under the table, but you would still get paid as a full-time worker. That probably didn't help with, that's why they're probably trying to cut down on the students now.
During those years, students could work unlimited hours. However, in July 2023, the government reimposed limits on student working hours. So the new cap was 48 hours fortnightly, which is slightly higher as compared to the 40 hours. And that's not bad, especially if you are a genuine student.
So it's 24 hours a week now. Enough to be part-time, I think.
48 hours, which was an extra 8 hours of legal employment as compared to 40 hours prior to 2019 times, right? So by October 2023, we have started to notice that the government, is slowly changing its mind. It's reintroducing policies. So the aim is to revive international education, the quality and the integrity of international education. Because I've read somewhere that the government has somehow noticed that some students they are relying on employment. They have become full-time employees rather than
actual students,
which is it defeats the purpose of being a student, international student. You're here to study and not to work. So come October 2023, new policies were have been introduced slowly, and then if I'm not mistaken, January they were still a bit lenient. IELTS or higher English test or PTE test for English proficiency level were not yet imposed. There were some schools that you can still take their in-house English test.
Oh, really?
I got some students, I got some clients who were able to take the in-house test. And come March, they started to implement 5.5 for VET courses or vocational education training courses, which they have eventually increased to 6
and 6.5 for...
And then 6.5 for those who aim to get a degree for unis, as they say here. So people have observed that most of these policies, it made more difficult to obtain student visa. Not just difficult, but also costly. Because one of the key changes, of course, is the higher visa fees, which is more than double.
It's 1,600 now.
1,600. Imagine that.
On top of you having to pay for your IELTS or PTE. It's another fee you have to pay for.
So...
And they do increase every year, too.
Yes, every 1st of July. Right?
I think so.
They increase the fees. The visa fees are being increased every 1st of July.
And IELTS fees too.
IELTS fees.
They've gone higher every year now.
Yeah, but when I took my IELTS a few months back, it was only 450. But prior to checking
Yeah.
that, I think it was like a few dollars lower.
Yeah, it
But
goes
when
like higher every year.
Oh. So everything, it just goes up, the
Yeah.
cost. So yeah, by October 2023, the government, started to manifest some changes. And unfortunately, stricter visa rules.
Yes, if you think about it, fees alone, you're paying $2,000. 1,600 plus IELTS or
1,600.
PTE.
Yeah.
And if you fail your IELTS, you'll
You have to
take it again.
retake. You have to retake. So, what are the reasons behind those those policy changes? What do you think?
I think it all boils down to a couple of things. Like they're limiting people because of resources again. They have this whole idea that international students are the main reason why we have a housing crisis going on. And then another one possibly, but it might be because the elections are coming up. I do know that
It could also be political.
Could be a political thing. We have elections coming up, I think next year, for the change in PMs. So that could be another one too.
So what's this election going on? We have an election going on.
I think this one's just
for
local.
this month of August.
Just local.
Local.
Yeah.
All right.
That's why you see like banners around.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of banners around.
I think it's just the local per area, like for municipalities and stuff. Next year is like the big one.
The national election.
And the thing is, the difference here is if you're a citizen, it's mandatory voting.
It is mandatory.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get
You get
to
a
pay
fee.
fine, right?
Yeah, you pay, I think, $20 fee.
$20.
But it's not like, like they're not strict on it. Like let's say if you're busy at work and you voted late or whatever, you could just come there and be like, I'm busy at work, I couldn't get time off. They'd be like, it's all right. It does happen sometimes. But it's a good thing. Mandatory voting, I think, does help.
That is your role. If you're a good citizen, you have to vote.
Yeah, as long as you're informed too. Like even if it's mandatory voting, at least you need to be informed of who you're voting for.
So yeah, those are the reasons behind for the stricter visa rules. And then the government, the reasons actually are mixed. Some government policy shifts tackle problems that the international education industry generally acknowledges, including students primarily motivated by earning money rather than studying, and English language proficiency. I heard about that. There are some students who are able to come here, maybe because at that time they are not very strict, that you can just use the in-house test of the school. Hence, they're not sure with the English capacity of the student.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but sometimes there are programs where you have to study English here first. They do have that. So that's a different scenario, but I do know like for some schools, you could apply for English lessons first, which is study here. And then after that, this is when you study. Is that
you can come here as an English language student.
Yeah.
And then eventually transition to get a degree.
Yeah, but I think the main problem is you find students in these higher courses or diploma courses where they have a limited grasp of the English language, and sometimes you think, how did they get here? Like, what did they do? I've heard some. I'm not sure which countries these are, but you can ask someone to take the test for you.
Oh.
Yeah. I've heard.
How can that be possible? Like you are being asked for an ID, right?
I don't know how that specifically happens, but I've heard that there are places where you could ask someone to take your IELTS for you. That's how because in my experience, I've seen students here where they, not just in Australia, but in other places. Where they can't speak English, and you would think, how did they get here? But they're not in an ELICOS course. They're in an actual diploma course or a master's course. And you're surprised with, like, normally by the time you get to I did a master's course, and by the time you get to that point, you should have like experience and everything. And I've had like classmates who were like, how did that person get here? So it's kind of a mystery sometimes.
I cannot also imagine how would they survive in Australia.
Yeah, like I'm not questioning their intelligence. They could be smart people.
If they are going to apply for a permanent
Yeah.
residency.
Australia is an English-speaking country, so
how would
you
you
would think
survive
they would
here?
have a grasp of the language at first.
Unfortunately, with some, there's very little effort to improve their English. If you want to stay here permanently, you have to work on your English language.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And it's something that you cannot just, there's no shortcut to it. And when we visited one of our partner schools, Alana K, we were able to interview international students under ELICOS, or English Language Intensive Courses for Overseas Students, ELICOS. And we see that, there's effort to improve.
Yeah.
And that's very good because those students from ELICOS, they can apply for vet courses and then eventually for college degrees.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one of the reasons why the government is becoming stricter with the visa policies. And then other policies are new means of pursuing an old policy goal, encouraging international students to meet Australia's labor force needs. So the Australian government would like you, if you are a student, eventually transition to become a permanent resident or a skilled worker,
Yeah.
to be able to help with the labor gap, which is reasonable, which is, if you're going to think of it, it's at your advantage.
Yeah.
Do you want to become a student for the next 10 years?
And you have to keep paying as a student too.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have to start working on your PR pathway, permanent residency pathway. And that's what the government is aiming for.
Yeah, because if you're a student, you have to think about your tuition fees too every year.
Yeah.
So that's like a massive cost in anyone.
I don't know their reasons why they keep, just enrolling rather than working on their skills assessment.
Yeah.
And
I think it's because like some students that come here, they don't have the skills itself. Like you need to have like a valid skill to apply for a skill assessment, right? But if your previous job didn't fall under any of the categories, I don't think you qualify for the skill assessment, right?
yeah, and also I think some of the students, unfortunately, those are the students that the Department of Home Affairs are saying that they just come here to work.
Yeah.
So they are cookery students, and that yet they accept jobs like cleaning, driving. How is that related to your course? Just to share, a potential client from Adelaide, I really had difficulty, finding a pathway for her. Unfortunately, there's no pathway for her, even though she's been a student in Australia for 3 years.
Yeah.
You know why? She's a kitchen management student.
Yeah.
But looking at her work background in Australia, she's a sales coordinator, a sales assistant, a cashier,
Yeah.
a cleaning staff. So how is that related to your kitchen management course? Bottom line, you are a student, make sure that the work that you are going to apply for is not just any other work, not just to earn money, but make sure that it's in line with your course.
If you can.
Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And you'd become a student forever. Because you're just going to, since you don't have any relevant work experience, hence, you're just going to enroll yourself for another course.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're an international student for like 10 years.
Yeah. And then I think there was a case before where I think this lady, she kept studying different courses. Eventually, the government kind of saw that she's not a genuine student
She
anymore.
isn't.
Because like the studies she kept the courses she kept studying had no relationships with each other. So they said, I don't think you're a genuine student anymore.
So the next application was...
They were like, this is your last course. If you enroll again next year for as a student, we're going to deny you.
Oh.
Yeah, so that could happen too.
See, the Home Affairs is only right to implement that if that's the rationale behind.
Yeah,
You know?
I think, there's like a balance to it. Sometimes people might say it might be too much, and sometimes people say too less. So I think the issue right now is we need to try to find like a proper balance of letting people in, but also making sure that the people that we do let in are, I guess, genuine students in terms of students, or genuine students itself.
Of course, Australia would like to attract genuine students, which would eventually help fill the labor gap. I'm not saying that those who are working, that which are not related to their course. They're not contributing to the economy of Australia. They are. What the Australian government is trying to point out here is you cannot be a student forever.
Yeah. I think that sometimes another issue I think is other actual issues are getting piggybacked into this. We're talking about students specifically. We're not talking about like general immigration itself. Some people say, oh, you don't want people to come into Australia. We're not talking about that. This is like the student issue, you know, because sometimes, if you think about it, it feels like we're talking about anti-immigrant rhetoric, but not really. This is just like the student issues. Like the whole immigrant crisis in itself and everything is a different story altogether.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like students wanting to study. And I think it is right though that if you're a student here, you do actually want to study and not be working all the time. That's the different. This is what we're talking about, just in case it gets too out of hand with the whole situation.
Yeah, we talking to our partner schools, they have raised their concerns because they say that in the coming months they're not sure if they are still able to get new enrollees.
Yeah.
International students. There are partner schools here that they say they can survive in the next year or two because they have domestic students.
Yeah.
That's their main market. Although international students are also a bigger chunk of their income, but somehow they would survive for the next 2 years. But there are some who are, express their concerns like, what would happen to us in the coming months? We're not getting new enrollees. And I think the government is now determined in slashing the number of students coming here. And it's a crisis. It's a crisis because for the universities, for the education sector, because they say it may cause job loss. That's imminent. And although they are hopeful that in the coming months things would improve, maybe after the election, that's what they're saying.
That's also possible.
We wouldn't know.
Sometimes due to the politics, due to elections, they're trying to appease the people who don't want more people coming in. There's always going to be a thing here, especially in Australia. We do it's a reality that we do have like these kind of parties where like, oh, whites first only and all that stuff. It's a real thing. So
somehow it's also good because I spoke to a Filipino Australian who is a known figure here in Darwin, and he says that he's been in Australia for decades now, and the good thing about the Australian government is that they listen to their people. And unfortunately, the cry of the people now, of the majority now, is like, hey, we're having problems with housing, and we blame it to the influx of international students and temporary migrants. People in the government do something. That's why the people in the government are, trying to find solution through this. Although a lot of sectors are not pleased because there are also downsides.
I think it's also, this is like just an opinion for the most part, but one of the main reasons some people say that the government are using the international students as a scapegoat is because they themselves have vested interest in the properties.
Oh,
like some of the some of the people in the government, like they own like multiple properties too. So if we introduce like new legislature or whatever that actually offsets like these properties, if we try to remove negative gearing and everything, they get affected by that too. The same way as like we have like these new laws. Like I don't vape myself, but there's like these massive new laws on the vaping and all that. But they're not doing anything about the tobacco industry. But then if you think about it, there's more data on why people are dying from tobacco than the vaping itself. But why aren't they doing anything about that? Because there's a big reason maybe that they have like
tobacco is a huge
maybe
industry.
they're like shareholders, I don't know, and all that stuff. That's also a major thing. So that's one of the things they're saying, like why are they using international students and not actually tackling the real cause of the housing crisis?
And as you mentioned previously, how come it's being blamed, the housing shortage is being blamed to international students when international students don't buy properties here? Like they mostly stay in shared accommodations.
Like I don't know, like they're not like trying to bring up any statistic of how many international students buy houses off the bat. Like they should show the number of how many international students that come here in the first year, and they buy a house after, and how much that contributes into the housing crisis. Because you would know if you would see the number. Because if you do buy a house, you have to be like, are you a citizen or
Yeah,
what
or permanent resident.
Yeah,
at
they
least.
need details, so they would have that number. So you would know like who are the people buying houses,
Right.
who are the people accommodating. There would be a statistic about it. So I don't think like it's just the students really. But then they're the easiest to target. They're the easiest to put blame to at the moment, I think.
Scapegoat, as you say. So, a Senate hearing was conducted recently to address the concerns of the education industry.
Yeah.
And during that hearing, during the Senate hearing, witnesses from a number of peak bodies spoke, and they were very expressive in showing their discontent and objection with the proposed legislation. The peak bodies that spoke during the Senate hearing was ITECA, or Independent Tertiary Education Council Australia, Universities Australia, the Group of 8, the big universities in Australia, and other stakeholders, all of whom provided critiques of the proposed legislation. One peak body said that in 2023, the number of international student enrollments in Australia was only 2.4% above pre-pandemic levels. It was just 2.4% above pre-pandemic levels. That's why they don't get the rationale. Why are you taking the blame to students when the increase was very slight? It was a minimal 2.4%.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Yeah,
Somehow you're right.
It doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah,
Like,
a very slight increase, and yet students are being blamed.
yeah. I think it's like a compounding thing, probably.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
it feels like they're just, if you go back to it, like, they're the easiest to blame. You know, like
Easy target.
they're an easy target. Like, instead of actually dealing with the specific of what their problems are, you know, like, oh, that's the easiest way to do it is just either, you know, cut the students. At first, you said they wanted to increase the fees so they could offset the costs for poorer Australians.
To helping poorer Australians.
And now, like, they're doing a whole 180 of, oh, okay, we're just going to cut it instead. So which one is it? Do you want to increase the rates to help the Australians? Then wouldn't you want more people coming in? Or do you want to actually cut the students coming in? It's like we're not seeing which direction they want to go to.
That's right. So, you know, if that 40% cap is implemented, according to an analysis, for example, the University of Sydney would need to reduce its foreign enrollment by more than 12,000 students. And how many in University of Melbourne? It's like
8,000.
8,000. So that's a lot.
That's
and
a good number.
Going to, you know, affect their business, and business means, you know, money, people. People will lose their jobs.
Like, I'm not sure what is the total number of students they have. They might have like good reasons for cutting students, but maybe not that much. I feel like I'm not like I can't say I'm not sure, but you know, I don't think they should specifically rely fully on international student tuition fees. That's also another thing we have to deal with. I think it's a multifaceted issue. There's a lot of, it's not just a one issue thing. If you think if you go through with it really, it's not an easy problem to fix, I think.
Yeah.
And it's probably gonna take more than a year.
Yeah.
And the problem is we have elections coming up, and I think the issue here is, I think the terms for per PM is only 3 years, I think.
3 years.
So it's pretty short, you know. Like the time that you're given, you probably won't be able to do as much.
Yeah.
I don't think we can solve this in a year, if you think about it.
I don't think so. It's a very huge issue.
Yeah.
And you know, the downside though, if this is implemented, so we are going to expect less international students, and well, international students, they fill the labor gap here. In Darwin, for those cafes, restaurants, international students are working there.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
what would happen to those businesses? You know, we spoke with some of our clients who are operating businesses here in Darwin, and they are also worried.
Yeah.
It's not just the schools, not just the universities that are affected, but also the local businesses.
Yeah, especially in places like Darwin, where I think we have a higher net. What do you call that? Not migration. Like we have a higher net of people coming out of the state rather than coming in out of the territory. So like it's not like Sydney where there always have people coming in.
It's
but
always
this one
crowded.
always have people coming out.
So, yeah, those are one of the concerns, the downside of the legislation if implemented. And I think they are determined to implement that. January, we will see. We still have a few months to go.
Still have like 4 or 5
And,
months.
if Australia were to limit the cap, the number of international student enrollments to the levels seen before the COVID-19 pandemic, according to an economist, Richard Holden, from the UNSW Business School, there would be a dramatic drop in international students, and also it could push the economy into a recession. Yeah, why do you think so? Why would it? Because of course students, when they come here, they also spend,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of other industries would also be affected.
Yeah. That could be possible too.
Because of course, yeah, they buy their groceries, they pay their taxes also. Yeah, right? So they buy their goods, they go out, they spend. And according to it says that the move will result in a significant economic loss, and the estimated loss in this scenario is over 5.3 billion in terms of economic output. So the question is the government ready for that scenario?
Yeah.
Right?
Especially by January. Like what I guess they're not talking about it yet, but is it by January? Is it just a full cut, or are they slowly gonna introduce are they going to slowly wean off the numbers of people coming in? I don't think they've said anything about that yet.
Yeah, they don't.
And then what happens if? Because I remember there's a thing where you can't apply for a student visa anymore if you're in Australia, right?
Right.
So that's another.
You
that's
come here
another
as a
thing.
tourist under a tourist visa or a business visa, and then you decide after 2 months of staying you want to enroll or to study in Australia. You cannot do that anymore. You have to exit, go back to your home country, lodge your application overseas.
Because back in the day, if you did that, it sort of extends your stay, right?
Yeah. Now the Department of Home Affairs has closed that opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's according to one of the stakeholders. The government has already introduced 9 key policy changes in the past year. So this one, it's going to a big blow on the international education sector. Those 9 key changes are from English language, higher visa fees, the closure of some, the inavailability of some, like the 600 to transitioning to 500, that's not going to be available anymore, plus this one. So people are asking, hey, what are you trying to do with the international education sector?
Yeah.
Are you really trying to help? Or are you trying to what?
It's just our 4th biggest sector in terms of earnings.
We will see. We will see how it goes. But myself, as an education agent, counselor, I see the worries with our partner schools.
Yeah.
But they say that we can weather this. Although they say that this is the worst that they experience in the past years. That a lot policy after policy are being implemented, and it's very hard. They don't know what would happen to their business. And not also their business, but they're also concerned with their students. And unfortunately, there are some particular countries that are targeted by when
is
you
that
say,
what they call like tier countries?
Tier countries. So like level 1 countries, they're somehow not affected. They can still have their visa application granted if of course less restrictions.
It's like a guarantee that if you come from these level 1 countries.
Level 1 countries, Canada, Australia, Canada,
you're not gonna be a burden
US,
to,
UK. You don't need to take up English language tests anymore. No evidence of funds.
Really?
Philippines, my home country, used to be at level 2.
Okay.
Now, according to a partner school, Philippines is now at level 3, meaning if a potential student from the Philippines apply for student visa, that person would be asked for IELTS, funds, and plus more
more
requirements,
documents to
which
show.
were not, were not the case before.
So what was the difference between a level 2 and a level 3 country?
A level 2 countries, I think, are, it depends on the risk.
Yeah. Oh.
I think
It's
that's
like a
what
risk, like a
countries-
risk
yeah.
assessment.
Yeah, the risk assessment. And some of the schools, they no longer want to accept applicants or enrollees from those high-risk countries because if the application gets refused, they get a demerit.
Yeah.
It's associated
That
to their
I know.
school.
Like they try to avoid like getting students that get rejected but for the visas because it affects their status. It affects their what do you call that? Intake ratios or intake rates. So they want to make sure that all the students they accept, they're sure that they're gonna get visas too. So they could market it as, oh yeah, we have 0 rejection rates, 0.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I've
Because it affects the image of their school.
Yep. That's true.
The credibility, they say. So unfortunately, Philippines, my home country, is on level 3 now. Hopefully it would improve eventually because we used to be at level 2 and applicants used to enjoy more relaxed visa visa rules now. Plus now I heard the application is taking longer than usual.
Really?
Yeah.
Do we have I'm not sure if we have a holiday visas. Like the working holiday
it's
visas?
already implemented. The working holiday visa. And I think it's available for 18 up to 30 years old. But of course, there are some. There's still some restrictions, but it's a good move. It's a very good development. It's another opportunity for those who want to come to Australia. But of course, the working holiday visa, the main purpose is for you to take a holiday. And that you're just going to extend, you're just going to work to be able to support your holiday.
Normally, if you're in a working holiday visa, they have like these special jobs that you're required to do.
Yeah.
Normally, a lot of the holiday workers, they work in the factories or they work in the farms to kind of because normally like we have a labor shortage in like the cattle farms or those places, and that's what they do to fill in that gap. So that's also another alternative for other people, the holiday work visas. But you do have to go home.
Yeah, you have to go home, of course. But, the situation for student visa applicants or for international students, it may not be as good as in the past years, but we wouldn't know. The policies, they keep changing. And this year, it may not be very good for some, but looking at the brighter side of it, it's a way of the government to gatekeep and to ensure that the education system's integrity is intact. Australia is known for a very good quality education, and they want to maintain that, right? That's why the reasons why they are implementing these policies.
Yeah, it's more of just finding that balance and how to make everyone happy about it. You know? Which is hard to do. Yeah,
if you are a genuine student, of course, you have nothing to worry. Well, easier said than done. But, if you have a very good backing, especially those scholars supported by the government, they have very good chances of having their visas approved. Yeah, they can still come here. Bottom line, you have to prove that you are a genuine student. No matter what country you're from. Proving that you are a genuine student, you have the funds.
Yeah, I think my time, like I had to write why I wanted to become an international student. So that's probably like a big factor too. Like they want to make sure that whatever you write in that letter is actually genuine of why you want to study there, why you want to experience being as an international student.
So hopefully in the coming months, we'd be able to get more updates, and we will discuss that all. All right.
So I guess that's mostly for our topic at the moment. Thank you for joining us on this video podcast. We are Enhance NT. Our office is located at 590 Mitchell Street, Northern Territory. Our email is skills@enhancedt.com.au. You can contact us at +61, which is Australia country code, +61 08 7979 2352. Then please like, subscribe, and share our social media platforms. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Spotify.
Whether you're an international student aspiring to study abroad or a professional looking to work in Australia, it is essential to seek professional advice, stay informed, and embrace the opportunities that migration brings.
And here at Enhanced Down Under, we will help you choose the right path for your career goals. Up until next time.